Hello, everybody. I'm back. I'm going to do a video for you for photosynthesis since a lot of you asked and you think it's so hard, but it's really not. So this is all the things that you need to know, basically the whole synopsis of all those procedures. We start with ATP. I told you a million times, your body does not run on potato chips. If you need energy, you eat food. If your body doesn't run on that food, it runs on ATP. So we need to talk about what ATP is. ATP has got three parts to it. You need to know those three parts. You need to know the sugar. In the middle is a ribose. You need to know adenine to the left, and you need to know the phosphate groups. Got a picture for you. The sugars is hard to do backwards. Sugar, the base, and then the three phosphate groups. That's why it is called adenosine triphosphate, because there are three phosphate groups. It is a battery that is fully charged. When it is not fully charged, it is a DP, two phosphate groups, two phosphate groups. Basically what your body does is it constantly takes this thing. You've got a bunch of these things running around all the time in your body. And then when you eat food and you need energy, it'll take this thing and turn it into this thing. So because of that, by adding that third phosphate group, all of the energy is sitting in this last bond. So if this is how you added energy to it, how do you get energy off of it? You break that bond. So constantly that's what your body's doing. If you need to move a muscle, you break that bond, energy is released. So your body runs on ATP, but you need energy to make ATP. So you are either an autotroph or a heterotroph. Autotroph makes their own food. Heterotroph, you have to eat for food. We are heterotrophs. Oak trees, here's a hint, oak trees are autotrophs. How they do that, if they go through photosynthesis, is they use energy from the sun to make sugar. This is the entire purpose. The whole thing of photosynthesis is to make sugar. It's not to make oxygen. Yes, plants make oxygen. It's not to make oxygen. That's their waste. It is to make sugar. So the overall thing about photosynthesis, you should know the two things on the one side. You need what? If I gave you a plant, you need to water it. It needs water and it needs carbon dioxide. It is going to use energy from the sun to make two things. The most important thing, sugar. The other important thing, oxygen. Important for us, not important for them. That's their waste product. So this entire process, you can break it down into two steps. Light-dependent reactions, light-independent reactions. The light-dependent reactions, basically what you're doing, you're getting energy from the sun, you're making a little bit of compounds out of energy so that we can then go make sugar. So we first need to talk about where this is taking place. In plants, if you're looking at a plant, a leaf, inside of a leaf, like what you looked at today, inside of a cell, there's these little circle things, chloroplasts. In the chloroplast is where you have all the stuff that you need to make sugar. You've got little sacs, those are your thylakoids. Drew with a picture of that too. You've got the stacks of them, grana, and then all of the space around the outside is all fluid called the stroma. Each reaction takes place at a different place, and you need to know that. So let's first talk about the light-dependent reactions that involve the light. We are now going to go inside of one of these thylakoids. So inside of a thylakoid, you have pigment. Pigment is what absorbs light. Plants, in order to get the energy from the sun, they have this stuff, chlorophyll, their main pigment, that takes in all of the light. What it does is it energizes, and what jumps off of it? Electrons. Electrons get all excited and they hold all of that energy. They also have accessory pigments. Honors, you need to know this. CP, you do not. Their accessory pigments are carotenoids, which sounds like carrot. It is oranges. So you need, hold on, did this freeze? I'm frozen. Okay, I'm back. I hope you guys do not see that frozen picture of me for a good solid 10 seconds. The carotenoids absorb all the other colors that chlorophyll can't. So let's talk about plants. They're green. It's because chlorophyll absorbs all the colors but green, reflects green. So it gets all the energy from those blues and those reds, reflects those yellows and those greens. Carotenoids does the opposite. It can absorb the greens, but it reflects the orange. So this is why honors or CP don't need to know this, but in the fall, when the plants are starting to change color, it's because it's getting colder and the chlorophyll starts breaking down. If there's no more chlorophyll, but there's still carotenoids, they start to look orange and red. That's why they change color. So the entire steps of light-dependent reactions start when you've got your pigment absorbing the sunlight. CP, again, you don't need to know all of this detail, so kind of just don't listen to this part. But you've got photosystems. Photosystems is where all of your pigment is located. So if I asked you, where is chlorophyll located? It's in photosystems, which are in the thylakoid membrane. So you've got a photosystem. I didn't label them, but I drew a couple pictures. Photosystem, start here, get struck by light. Once it gets struck by light, electrons jump off of it. They get shuttled through the electron transport chain, and the electron transport chain is doing something very important. As they're taking that energy, they're pushing hydrogen inside the thylakoid. Super important for a later thing. Then they jump to photosystem 1. Photosystem 1, now the electrons lost energy. They get struck by light, and then the electrons jump off. They now go to another ETC. Again, hydrogen inside, hydrogen inside, hydrogen inside. And now those electrons we can go use that energy to make sugar. Here's an issue. We talked about electrons. They're reactive. They'll bump into things and lose their energy. So what we need to do is we need to have a carrier. So you should know this by now. Who is the carrier? NADP+. So NADP+ picks up the electrons. There's that whole hydrogen thing. Don't worry about that. Once they pick up the electrons, they turn into NADPH. Remember, if there's an H, it means it has energy. That's an easy way to remember it. So if there's a true or false that says we add electrons to NADPH, that's false. We add electrons to NADP+. If it has an H on there, it already has electrons on it. So make sure you don't get tripped up on that. So that's the first thing we made. We made NADPH. It has energy. It can go out to the stroma and go make sugar. Second thing we need to make is ATP. We need a little bit of ATP. So let's first talk about what water does before we get to making the ATP. If you remember, our photosystem is sad because our photosystem lost its electrons. It needs electrons back. So where does it get electrons from? That good guy named water. Water is going to give up his electrons, and when he does that, he basically splits himself in half and is donezo. When you take H2O and you split it in half, you get hydrogen, which goes inside with all the other hydrogen, and you get oxygen. This is your waste product. This is why plants give off oxygen, because it is their waste when they split their water. We need to talk about all the H's now. We've talked about diffusion, and if you keep taking H's and pumping them and pumping them and pumping them inside the thylakoid, what's going to want to happen? They're going to want to go out. And they go out through, let me draw it, a fancy looking thing called ATP synthase. ATP synthase is like a windmill, except instead of wind making it turn, hydrogen make it turn. Honors, you need to know that. What goes through ATP synthase? Hydrogen. So the hydrogen goes through. As it goes through, it causes it to spin. And every time it spins, it's making us ATP. Where do you make ATP from? You should know this. You make it from ADP. So we're taking ADP and we're adding that extra phosphate group on it. Every time it spins, you add a phosphate group. Boom, now you've got ATP. We've got what we wanted. We needed energy to make our sugar. We've got it in ADPH, and we've got it in ATP. That is it for the light-dependent reactions. So number one, where does it take place? Thylakoid membrane. Number two, what did we need? We needed light. We needed water. What did we make? We made three things. We made ATP. We made NADPH, and we made a waste product, which was oxygen. Done. Now, we haven't made sugar yet. The entire purpose of this entire process is to make sugar, so we need to make sugar. So we're going to go out to the stroma. The fluid portion all around the outside of the thylakoids is the stroma. This is where we're going to make sugar. I know I've gotten to detail in that little Calvin cycle, but you don't need to know all that stuff about RUBP and the threes and all that numbers. All you need to know for the test, you need to know that we are going to take ATP and NADPH, our energy, and we are going to make sugar using something. Sugar, C6H12O6. You need carbon. Where do you get carbon from? What do plants take out of the air? They take out carbon dioxide. So we take all that carbon dioxide, we rip all the carbons off of it, we do a bunch of rearranging with that energy, and then boom, out pops the sugar. We're done. We made sugar. That's it. You're done. Photosynthesis is done. And that just keeps happening. Light-dependent reactions keep making energy. Light-independent reactions keep making sugar. whole entire process. The only other thing that you need to know is the 3 things that affect this process, which is pretty simple. If I gave you a plant and you were in 4th grade, you would know how to take care of a plant, and that's the things that affect photosynthesis. Number 1, you need to give it sun. If you put it in a closet, it's going to die. So sunlight, remember though, you need to be able to look at a graph and be able to tell me what sunlight does to the rate of photosynthesis, which it goes up and up